Chosen one. If you're watching this right now, you're about to discover the 4 brutal truths about your delayed awakening that will finally make sense of why you felt stuck for so long. And by the end of this message, you'll know exactly what to do next. You're a Group 7 chosen one. And if you're over 30, maybe 50, 60, even 70, and you've spent years watching others rise while you felt frozen in place, this message was encoded specifically for your spirit. You've been carrying a question that no one else seems to understand. Why has my life felt like it's been on pause when I have so much still inside me? Here's what heaven wants you to know. You weren't forgotten. You were being forged. And everything you're about to hear will prove that your delay wasn't denial. It was preparation for what only you can do now. So if this resonates deep in your soul, type 777 in the comments as a sacred confirmation that you're ready to receive what's next, and subscribe to this channel, because what I'm about to share with you is just the beginning of the guidance heaven has been waiting to deliver directly to you. Let's begin. The 4 brutal truths about being a late bloomer, chosen one, that no one tells you. Let me tell you something that might sting a little, but I promise you, it's going to set you free. Everyone wants to hear that you were held back for a reason, that God or the universe was protecting you, keeping you safe until the perfect moment. And maybe, just maybe, that's partially true. But here's what I've learned after walking alongside hundreds of people just like you. Your delay wasn't just divine protection. It was preparation through pain. And that's a very different thing. Truth number 1. Your delay wasn't divine protection. It was a test. You had to pass. See, protection suggests you were wrapped in bubble wrap, kept pristine and untouched. But look at your life. You weren't protected from heartbreak, were you? You weren't shielded from failure, loss, disappointment, or those long nights when you questioned everything about yourself. No, you went through all of that. You felt all of it. So what was really happening during those decades when everyone else seemed to be moving forward and you felt stuck? You were being taught something they couldn't learn. Let me give you a real example. Her name was Vera Wang. Now, if you know that name, you know her as one of the most iconic wedding dress designers in the world. But what you might not know is this. Vera wanted to be a figure skater. That was her dream. She trained for the Olympics. She gave everything to that dream, and she failed. She didn't make the team. For years after that, she worked as a fashion editor, not designing, just watching other people design. She didn't start creating wedding dresses until she was 40 years old. 40. And when people asked her later what made her design so different, you know what she said? I failed at the one thing I wanted most. But those years watching, learning, understanding what brides really wanted, not what designers thought they should want, that's what made everything click. The delay forced her to learn what she couldn't have learned if she'd succeeded early. Now think about someone closer to home. Maybe it's your neighbor. Let's call him Robert. He worked in corporate finance for 30 years. Hated every minute of it, but it was secure. Then 2008 hit. He got laid off at 52. No job, no prospects, feeling like a complete failure. But something shifted. He started spending time in his garage, making furniture with his hands. Real, beautiful, handcrafted pieces. Now he runs a small woodworking business. Not rich, but truly happy for the first time in decades. When I asked him what changed, he said, I wasn't being protected during those corporate years. I was being forced to let go of what I thought I should be so I could become who I actually am. Here's what most people get wrong. They wait for permission. They wait for a sign. They wait for the timing to feel right. But here's the reality check. The delay ends when you decide it ends. Not when circumstances are perfect. Not when you feel ready. When you stop waiting for cosmic permission and realize you've been the sign all along. So let me ask you directly, what's the one thing you've been putting off because the timing isn't right? What if the timing will never feel right? What if right now, imperfect as it is exactly when you're supposed to begin? Because here's the real twist. You weren't held back by divine forces. You were held back by your own fear. And the universe let you sit in that fear until you were ready to face it. That's not punishment. That's respect for your free will. The question is, are you still sitting there? Truth number 2. Being sensitive isn't a superpower until you stop bleeding. From it now, I know what the other videos tell you. You're an empath. You feel everything. You're so special. But let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many times this week did someone else's bad mood ruin your entire day? How many times did you walk into a room and absorb everyone's anxiety like a sponge? How many times have you left a conversation feeling drained, carrying emotions that weren't even yours? That's not a superpower. That's a wound that hasn't healed yet. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's 58, a retired teacher. For 30 years, she could walk into her classroom and instantly know which kid was struggling, which one was hiding something, which one needed extra attention. She was incredible at her job because of this gift. But here's what she didn't tell anyone. She couldn't go to the grocery store without having panic attacks. Too many people. Too many energies crashing into her all at once. Her husband thought she was making excuses. She thought she was going crazy. One day, she told me, I wasn't sensitive. I was unprotected. There's a difference. And she's right. There's actual science behind this. Dr. Elaine Aron has spent decades researching what she calls highly sensitive people, HSPs. About 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that's wired differently. It's not mystical or magical. It's neurological. These people process sensory information more deeply. They notice subtleties others miss. But here's the critical part. HSPs who never learn boundaries end up with chronic fatigue, autoimmune diseases, and burnout. Dr. Aron puts it this way. Sensitivity without boundaries is like having skin without an outer layer. Everything penetrates. Let me show you the difference. An unhealed sensitive person avoids crowds because they're overwhelmed. An awakened chosen one moves through crowds while maintaining their own energy. An unhealed sensitive takes on others' emotions unconsciously, like a sponge. An awakened chosen one chooses what to feel empathy for and releases what doesn't serve. An unhealed sensitive says, I can't help it. I just feel everything. An awakened chosen one says, I feel what matters. I release what doesn't. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. You're not special because you feel everything. You're special when you learn to feel selectively. And that requires work that most people avoid because it means saying no. It means disappointing people. It means being called cold by people who've been using your sensitivity as their personal emotional dumping ground for years. So here's what I want you to do. It's called the 24-hour test. For the next week, every time you feel a heavy emotion, pause and ask yourself, is this mine? Or did I pick this up from someone else? If it's not yours, if you absorbed it from your spouse, your coworker, the news, that phone call, visualize handing it back. You don't need an elaborate ritual. Just acknowledge it's not yours and let it go. Track this for 1 week. You'll be shocked at how much of what you're carrying isn't even yours. Truth number 3, the loneliness you feel. It's not sacred solitude. It's unprocessed grief. Okay? Now I'm about to say something that might really sting, but you need to hear it. A lot of you aren't choosing solitude for spiritual growth. You're avoiding the pain of being misunderstood. And I know this because I did it for years. I called it spiritual incubation. My therapist called it isolation. We were both right. Even the great spiritual teachers struggled with this. Alan Watts, you might know his voice from all those mindfulness videos, was a brilliant philosopher who taught millions about presence and enlightenment. But he struggled with alcoholism and died at 58. His daughter later wrote, "My father could enlighten thousands, but couldn't connect with his own family. Even people who understand consciousness deeply can confuse isolation with enlightenment." So let me ask you some uncomfortable questions, and I want you to be honest, not with me, but with yourself. When was the last time you were truly vulnerable with someone? Do you avoid connection because you're too evolved, or because you're scared of rejection? Are you in sacred solitude, or are you just lonely and calling it spiritual? Have you cut people off because they don't vibrate at your frequency, or because intimacy feels too risky? Here's how you know the difference. Sacred solitude recharges you. Spiritual bypassing depletes you. Sacred solitude is chosen consciously in specific moments. Spiritual bypassing becomes your default mode out of fear. Sacred solitude is a temporary phase for integration. Spiritual bypassing becomes a permanent lifestyle. In sacred solitude, you still maintain a few close relationships. In spiritual bypassing, you've cut everyone off and convinced yourself you're better off alone. But here's the twist nobody talks about. A lot of late-blooming awakening happens after loss, after divorce, after your kids leave home, after retirement, after someone dies. And instead of processing that grief, the real, raw, painful grief, we spiritualize it. We say, "I'm awakening," when really, we're just alone now. And we're trying to make meaning out of that aloneness instead of feeling the loss underneath it. The poet Mary Oliver understood this. After her partner died, she went deep into nature. She spent years walking in the woods, watching birds, writing. But she didn't avoid her grief. She walked straight through it. She wrote it. She let it reshape her. She once wrote, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." That's sacred solitude. Not escaping the darkness, but sitting with it until it teaches you something. So here's your action step, and it's going to be hard. Write a letter to the version of yourself that wants to connect, but is too afraid. What is that person scared of? What would need to happen for that fear to heal? You don't have to send this letter to anyone. Just write it. Because until you face what you're actually avoiding, you'll keep calling it spirituality. Truth number 4. You're not receiving downloads. You're finally listening to what you've always known. All right, this last one might lose some of you, but I have to say it because it's the truth that will actually set you free. Those downloads you're getting at 3 a.m., that information that feels like it's coming from Source or the universe or your spirit guides, most of the time, it's just your own wisdom finally getting through the noise. Now, before you click away, hear me out. I'm not trying to invalidate your spiritual experience. I'm trying to empower you to trust yourself, not just higher powers. Steve Jobs talked about this. He called it connecting the dots. He said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future." His famous intuition that led to the iPhone, to revolutionary design, It wasn't mystical downloads. It was pattern recognition from decades of experience. His brain was connecting dots he'd collected over a lifetime. Calligraphy class, his time in India, working with engineers, studying user behavior. What felt like sudden knowing was actually rapid pattern matching from 10,000 hours of lived experience. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in his book, Blink. Expert intuition, that snap judgment that feels like magic, is actually your unconscious mind processing massive amounts of data in milliseconds. The more experience you have, the more accurate your gut feelings become. There's even neuroscience behind this. Your brain has something called the default mode network. It activates when you're resting, not actively thinking. This is when your brain processes and integrates all the information you've absorbed. Those nighttime activations you're experiencing, that's your brain doing its job. You're not receiving cosmic transmissions. You're finally quiet enough to hear yourself think. But here's the balance. Does this mean it's not spiritual? No. Maybe the divine speaks through your own accumulated wisdom. Maybe God doesn't need to shout from the clouds when He already planted seeds in every experience you've ever had. Maybe the download is real, but it's coming from within, not from without. Think about it three ways. The mystical version says, the universe is sending me messages. The grounded version says, my accumulated wisdom is finally breaking through my mental chatter. The integrated version says, what I'm receiving feels true because it resonates with something I've always known, but couldn't articulate. All three can be true at once. Here's the mistake most people make. They wait for bigger downloads, clearer signs, more dramatic revelations. Meanwhile, they ignore the quiet, consistent knowing that's been there all along. You know what your marriage needs. You know what career change to make. You know who to call. You're just waiting for cosmic permission, when the permission has to come from you. So here's your practice. Next time you have a download or sudden knowing, write it down. But then ask yourself, what life experiences might have taught me this? Where have I seen evidence of this truth before? You might be surprised to find that you've known this all along. You just needed permission to trust yourself. And that's what these 4 brutal truths are really about. Permission. Permission to stop waiting. Permission to set boundaries. Permission to grieve. Permission to trust your own wisdom. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not waiting for activation from the sky. You're Group 7, which means your activation isn't coming. It's here. It's been here. You've just been too busy waiting for permission to notice that you already have everything you need. Now, the question becomes, what are you going to do with it? Because knowing these truths is just the beginning. The real work, the work that will change everything, that's what we're diving into next. The 3 things Group 7 must do now that will change everything. All right, so now you understand the brutal truths. You know your delay was preparation. You know your sensitivity needs boundaries. You know your solitude might be grief. And you know your wisdom has been inside you all along. But here's where most people get stuck. They stop at understanding. They nod their heads, feel validated, and then nothing changes. They go back to waiting for the big moment, the clear mission, the day when everything finally clicks into place and they know exactly what they're here to do. So let me tell you what Group 7 actually needs to do now. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. Now. Thing number 1, stop waiting for your purpose and start practicing your presence. I know what you're waiting for. That lightning bolt moment. The day you wake up and suddenly know your divine assignment. The moment when your gifts make perfect sense and people line up to receive them, right? But what if I told you that's not how it works? What if your purpose isn't a destination? It's a practice. Let me tell you about Fred Rogers. You know him as Mr. Rogers. For over 30 years, he showed up on television and talked to children. He wasn't trying to be a spiritual guru. He wasn't trying to save the world or build an empire. He just showed up every single day and made children feel like they mattered. He once said, "I'm not trying to tell them what to think. I'm just trying to tell them they matter." That was it. That was his whole mission. Just presence. Just showing up. Just seeing people. And it changed millions of lives. Now let me tell you about someone you've probably never heard of. There's a woman who works at the Trader Joe's near my house. She's maybe 60 years old. She works the checkout line. And every single time I go there, she makes eye contact with every customer. She remembers the regulars' names. She asks about their day and actually listens to the answer. One customer told me, "She's the reason I come to this store. In a world where everyone's distracted and rushing, she makes me feel seen." That woman is activating people, not with downloads or cosmic energy, just with presence. That's Group 7 in action. Your purpose isn't about doing something big. It's about being someone steady. You're not here to save the world. You're here to show up fully for the 3 people in your life who are watching to see what grounded looks like when everything's falling apart. Here's the practice. And this is what you actually do. Week 1-2, the presence audit. For 14 days, track every interaction you have, every conversation, every moment with another person, and ask yourself honestly, was I fully present or was I waiting for it to end? Notice the patterns. Which people do you check out from? Which situations make you drift away? Week 3-4, the one-person practice. Pick one person in your life, just one. For the next 2 weeks, commit to being 100% present every time you interact with them. No phone, no multitasking, no planning your response while they're talking. Just there. Notice what happens. Not just to them, to you. Month 2. Expand the circle. Add one more person, then another. You're not trying to be fake or overly spiritual. You're not performing presence. You're just there, fully there. Now let me tell you about someone who taught me what this really means. I know a guy. Let's call him Tom. He's 67 years old now. Retired electrician. Spent his whole life thinking he was supposed to do something important. He kept waiting for a calling, a big mission, some clear sign of what he was meant to contribute. Then his wife got dementia. And for 5 years, he just showed up. He fed her. He bathed her. He sat with her when she didn't remember his name anymore. When she looked at him like he was a stranger. When she forgot they'd been married for 42 years. He didn't think of it as spiritual work. He didn't call it a mission. He just did it because she needed him. But here's what his kids told me. Watching Dad with Mom taught us what love actually is. Not the romantic kind. Not the easy kind. But the kind that stays when there's nothing left to stay for except the promise you made. That's Group 7. That's the mission. It's not glamorous. It doesn't get applause. But it changes everything for the people who witness it. Your activation isn't waiting in some cosmic download. It's waiting in the next conversation where you choose to be fully present instead of half there. Thing number 2. Build your council, not your following. Now here's an uncomfortable question. How many people in your life right now could you call at 2 a.m.? How many people know the real you? Not the spiritual you, not the healed you, but the messy, doubting, sometimes petty you. Because here's what I've learned. You don't need a following. You need a council. And most of you don't have one. Let me show you the difference. A following is made of people who admire you. A council is made of people who challenge you. A following agrees with everything you say. A council tells you when you're wrong. A following needs you. A council knows you, the real you. A following validates your ego. A council refines your character. A following shows up for the light. A council stays through the darkness. C.S. Lewis, the man who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, had a group called the Inklings. It included J.R.R. Tolkien, the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings. Every week they met in a pub. They read their work to each other, and they gave brutal feedback. Lewis said about friendship, "It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things which give value to survival." Even genius needs people who keep them grounded. Or look at Bill Wilson, the man who founded Alcoholics Anonymous. He could have built a massive following. He could have made millions. Instead, he built councils, small groups of people committed to telling each other the truth. The whole 12-step sponsor relationship isn't about having a fan. It's about having an accountability partner who will call you on your nonsense at 2 a.m. Here's the problem with most spiritual communities. They're echo chambers. Everyone's there to be validated, not challenged. Everyone shares their breakthroughs, but nobody talks about their breakdowns. Everyone's a light worker, but nobody wants to look at their shadow. That's not a community, that's a performance. So here's how you build your actual council. Step 1. The inventory. Make a list of every person you consider close. Then ask yourself honestly, is this reciprocal? Or am I always the giver? Or always the receiver? Who have you not been truly real with in over a year? Who drains you versus who grounds you? Step 2. The invitation. This is the hard part. Pick 2 or 3 people you trust, but have kept at arm's length. Have the scary conversation. Say something like, "I'm going through something, and I need people who can handle the real me, not the polished version, the messy one. Can you be that person?" Some will say no. That's okay. That's actually important information. Better to know now than to keep pretending. Step 3. The agreement. If they say yes, set up regular meetings, weekly or monthly, whatever works. But create ground rules and make them explicit. Confidentiality. What's shared in the council stays in the council. Permission to challenge each other. If I'm being delusional, you can say so, and vice versa. No toxic positivity. We're not here to make each other feel good. We're here to help each other see clearly. You can say, "I don't know," and "I messed up." Vulnerability is required. You can be silent together. Not every meeting needs to be productive. Sometimes you just sit in the same room and breathe. My own council isn't all spiritual people. One's an atheist engineer who thinks most of what I believe is scientifically dubious. One's a Catholic nun who prays for my soul regularly. One's a divorced dad who thinks I'm a bit woo-woo but harmless. And that's exactly why it works. They don't let me disappear into spiritual concepts. They ask practical questions like, "Okay, but did you call your sister back? And how are you actually doing financially? And when's the last time you laughed?" That's the stuff that keeps you sane. Your council should be small enough to fit around a dinner table, because that's where real transformation happens. Not on a stage, not in a Facebook group with 10,000 members you've never met, around a table, with people who've seen you cry and still show up next week. Thing number 3, do the one thing you've been avoiding. That's where your activation actually lives. All right, now we need to talk about the thing you came here hoping I wouldn't mention. The thing you've been spiritually bypassing for years. The thing that, if you're honest with yourself, you know you need to do, but you keep waiting for the right time. That thing, that's not blocking your activation. That thing is your activation. Let me guess what it might be. The apology you owe someone, the boundary you need to set, the relationship you need to end, the career you need to quit, the grief you need to finally feel, the anger you need to express, the forgiveness you need to give or receive, the truth you need to speak. Am I close? Martha Graham, one of the greatest dancers and choreographers who ever lived, said this: "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique." But here's what people don't know about Martha. She struggled with perfectionism for decades. She didn't create her best work until she stopped trying to be good enough and just started moving. Her block was her assignment. Now, before we go further, I need you to sit with 4 uncomfortable questions. Don't skip past these. Actually pause and answer them honestly. 1. What have you been praying to have the courage to do? That's it. That's the thing. 2. What would you do if you weren't afraid of what people think? That's your next step. 3. What keeps you up at 3 a.m. that isn't a spiritual download? That's the unfinished business. 4. If you died tomorrow, what would you regret not saying or doing? Start there. Here's the framework I want you to understand. I call it the activation equation. Your avoided thing, plus your willingness to face it, your actual power. Here's why this works. Every blocked chosen one I've ever met has one thing they won't touch. They'll meditate for hours. They'll journal. They'll read every spiritual book. They'll attend workshops and retreats. But they won't leave the job that's killing them. They won't set the boundary with their adult child. They won't have the conversation with their spouse. And that avoidance, that's the dam blocking everything else. All your spiritual downloads, all your intuition, all your gifts, they're all backed up behind that one thing you won't do. So let me help you identify what your thing might be. Most avoided things fall into 3 categories. Category 1, the relationship truth. Maybe it's the marriage that's been over for years, but you're staying out of obligation or fear. Maybe it's the adult child you need to set boundaries with, but you're afraid they'll cut you off. Maybe it's the parent you need to forgive. Or maybe it's accepting that you'll never forgive them, and that's okay too. Maybe it's the friend who's been toxic for a decade, but you feel loyal because of shared history. Category 2, the career honesty. Maybe it's the job that's been killing your soul, but pays well, and you're terrified of financial insecurity. Maybe it's the business you need to close because it's draining you, but you're ashamed to admit failure. Maybe it's the career change you want to make, but you think you're too old to start over. Maybe it's retirement you're afraid of because you don't know who you are without your work. Category 3, the self-reckoning. Maybe it's the addiction you've been minimizing. Alcohol, shopping, food, work, even spiritual practices can become addictions. Maybe it's the grief you've been staying strong through instead of actually feeling. Maybe it's the anger you've been spiritually bypassing with all this talk of love and light. Maybe it's the shame you've been carrying since childhood that you've never spoken out loud to another human being. Which category are you in? Be honest. Now here's your action plan. Week 1, name it. Write down the thing. Not vague like, I need to work on my relationship. Specific. I need to tell my husband I'm not happy and haven't been for 5 years. The naming is crucial. You can't face what you won't name. Week 2, reality test it. Tell one trusted person. Say it out loud. Watch what happens in your body. If you feel fear, you're onto something important. If you feel relief, you've been carrying this too long. Both are valid responses. Week 3. Make the plan. You're not doing the thing yet, just planning. What would need to be in place? What's the worst that could happen? What's the cost of not doing it? Get realistic. Not dramatic, realistic. Week 4. Take the smallest possible step. Not the whole thing. Just one move in that direction. If it's divorce, maybe you don't file papers yet, but you see a lawyer to understand your options. If it's quitting your job, you don't give notice yet, but you update your resume. If it's a confrontation, you don't have the full conversation yet, but you say one honest sentence. Now let me tell you a story, and this one might make you cry, but you need to hear it. I know a man. He's 72 years old now, retired Marine, tough guy his whole life, the kind of man who doesn't hug, doesn't cry, doesn't talk about feelings. But he had this one thing he'd been carrying for 40 years. He'd never told his son, his now adult son, that he was proud of him. You see, his son is gay, and my friend had complicated feelings about that. Not hate. He didn't hate his son, but not acceptance either. Just silence. For 40 years. And he kept thinking he needed to evolve spiritually before he could bridge that gap. He kept waiting to feel differently before he could say anything. So he said nothing. Then one day, his son had a health scare. Nothing fatal, but scary enough. A tumor. Had to have surgery. And sitting in that hospital waiting room, my friend realized, I don't have 40 more years to get spiritually ready. I might not even have 40 more days. So when his son came out of surgery, still groggy from anesthesia, my friend pulled his chair close to the hospital bed. He didn't have a speech prepared. He didn't wait for divine timing or cosmic permission. He just said, I don't understand your life. I probably never will. But I'm proud of the man you are. And I'm sorry. I never said that before. His son cried. He cried. They didn't fix 40 years in one conversation. They didn't solve everything. But you know what his son told me later? That was the day my dad became real to me. Not perfect, not enlightened, just real. And that's all I ever wanted. I didn't need him to understand me. I just needed him to see me. That is Group 7 activation, not light and love and cosmic downloads, not meditation retreats and spiritual workshops, but the courage to be real when it costs you something. The courage to speak the truth even when your voice shakes. The courage to do the thing you've been avoiding even though it might blow up your life. That's the work. That's the mission. And that's what the world is actually waiting for. Not more people performing spirituality. More people practicing humanity. So, I'm going to ask you one more time. What's the one thing you've been avoiding? Because your activation isn't coming. It's here. It's been here. It's waiting on the other side of that thing. And the moment you face it, not perfectly, not gracefully, but honestly, everything changes. Not because the universe rewards your courage, but because you finally stop abandoning yourself. And when you stop abandoning yourself, you become the kind of person others can finally trust. The kind of person who doesn't just talk about transformation. You embody it. That's Group 7. Not the chosen ones who were protected, but the chosen ones who chose. Now go do the thing. So here's the truth, my friend. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not waiting for permission anymore. You're Group 7. The ones who do the inner work while everyone else performs the outer work. The ones who tell the truth when everyone else is being positive. The ones who show up at 67 at 52, at 43, and say, I'm starting now, not because it's the right time, but because I'm done waiting. If this message found you today, it wasn't by accident. This was divinely orchestrated, and there's more heaven wants you to hear. Subscribe to this channel now, because the guidance you're receiving isn't finished. There are sacred instructions coming that are meant specifically for your soul's next chapter. Type 777 in the comments as your confirmation that you're ready. And I'll see you in the next message heaven has prepared for you. Welcome home, Group 7. Your mission has been